Hello everyone. Today we are going to look at how we can use Power Query to transform this dataset to this summary over here. So our data has a number of columns and also a number of rows, and it's also good to observe that we have blanks within our data, and we also have zeros. So if we look at this summary, what we only need from that data is the salesman name, the category, the unit of measure, and the sales quantity. So as I said, we are going to use Power Query, and the reason why we are going to use Power Query is because this is not a one-time process. This is something that happens on a daily basis. So I'm going to close this and I'm going to open Power Query. So to get the data to Power Query, we are going to go to data. Then because our data is on an Excel file, we are going to get data from Excel workbook. So here is my file, sales data, import. So our data is on sheet 1. Okay, so this is a preview of our data, and because our data is not well structured, so we are going to select transform data. So the first thing we are going to do is name our query. So here the name of our query is sheet 1, so we are going to call it sales summary. Okay, so by default Power Query has already put some steps for us, so we are going to remove all these transformations, and we are back to our source step. Here now we can see the name of our file is sheet 1. Then here we have under data, we have the table. So looking at our summary, all we need is the salesman name, the group, product, unit of measure, and text box 7. So text box 7 here contains our sales quantity. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new column, and then I'll use records to transform this dataset to a summary as shown on the picture when we were starting. Add column, custom column, and our first transformation will be to skip the first 3 rows and then promote headers. So I'm going to open and close these square brackets, then I'll say I'll promote headers. So first we said we are going to skip, so table dot skip. So our table is data and we are skipping the first 3 rows. So to see the transformation, we can return the headers here. Say okay. So this is our custom, and if you can see, we don't have the first 3 rows. Then we are going to nest our table promote headers. So if we return headers here, then we have our table. So our headers have been promoted. Then we need to select, we need to skip the first column and then retain these other 5 columns. So to do that, just go back here and add a new step, say select columns. So to do this, first we need to have a list of our columns. So table column names. This returns, so our table is headers. So we say select columns. So here we have a list of our column names. So we need to skip the first and keep the 5 So we'll come here and say list skip, list skip. We are going to skip only one. So the salesman code is gone. Then list that first n. So we need the first 5. Yeah. So here we have our column names. So actually this is column. Then we need to select columns is equals to table select columns. So our table will be headers and our columns will be column names. So if we return select columns, now we have a table with only the needed columns. So next we need to filter the nulls and the zeros. We are going to use this textbook 7 column. So come back here and say filter is equals to table dot select rows. Our table is select columns, and we need to use the keyword each text box 7 does not equal null. Okay. So here we return filter. Now the nulls are gone, so we also need to filter the zeros. So we are going to use an AND condition, and copy this, and text box 7 does not equal 0, and yes. So now we have that. So we are going to call this transform data. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select remove other columns. So remove other columns and expand here. So I don't want to hard code the names. So what I'm going to do is say table dot column names. Our table is remove other columns custom. So the first table, and here we have, so here is expand data. Okay. Then what we do is we are going to rename the salesman to salesman name, this to category, this to unit or measure, and we are not going to rename this because after grouping we are going to have an option to create a new name. So rename. We are also going to transform or change the data type. So these two are texts, and also this is a text. This is a decimal number. This is a decimal number. So here data type, and we want to group from, group by, add unit of measure is sales quantity sum of text box 7. Okay, so rename group. Okay, and close and load table. And we have this table format. So if you look, we have an exact match of our table.